Hey, you guys, welcome to another week of lesson. Today we're going to be focusing on 8.8, completing the square. Okay, so your vocabulary words for today's lesson is completing the square and representation. Okay, let's get right into the completing the square. All right, so today's main concept that we need to focus on for this lesson. You can model a quadratic expression using the algebra tiles. The algebra tiles below represents the expression x squared plus 8x. So for instance, this big squared, that's gonna be your x squared, and all of this is gonna be your 8x, because each one of them is gonna be represented an x, every single one of them. So here is the same expressions rearranged to the form part of a square. Notice that the x tiles have been split into two evenly groups of 4. So we just grab this information and we split it apart in half, and we put only one information of here and the other information here. So you can complete the squared by adding 4 squared or 16 tiles of 1 tiles. The completing the square as this whole thing expression will be as x squared plus 8x plus 16, or you could write it down in a factor form. So technically, the word for completing the square is that you have to fill in this blank. You have to fill in this blank based on the information that you just split it up evenly. And since that just happened, then you created these small little squares. These little small squares are basically 1 unit each. And once you can fill in all the gaps of the 1 squares from the rows and columns, like this, then what you created as a final result is a whole complete square. A whole complete square. That's why they call this completing the square, because you just created a square out of tiles. Based on this information, now you could write it down as a quadratic expression. That is a visual way to see things. If you're using algebra tiles, you could use some paper, cut it out into squares and rectangles, and you could play around with those shapes, and you could be completing the square. So in general, you could change the expression x squared plus bx into a perfect square trinomial by adding this formula. So your formula, it's right here on the bottom, right here. Let me see if I could highlight this expression, this formula. Let me put it in yellow. So all of this part section is your formula. Let me label this. Formula, 2x squared plus bx. This process is called completing the square. We just mentioned that by completing this square. The process is the same whether the b is positive or a negative as well. All right, so there's a YouTube link that I want to show you. It's one of those favorite videos that you love to watch. I put it under Google Classroom on the tutorial videos, so you could watch that part before continuing this video. But for the meantime, let's go ahead and practice some problems. What is the value of c such that x squared minus 16x plus c is a perfect squared trinomial? So technically, we're gonna follow this same concept. We have a binomial, and from a binomial, we went to a trinomial by applying the formula. So our formula in this case is going to be parentheses b divided by 2 and then close parentheses squared. In this case, this is your A, this is your B, and obviously this is your C. We don't know what C right now. So our B is -16. And then if we divide that by 2, and then we make this as a squared, let's see. So -16 divided by 2, we get -8, and then squared. From that process, -8 and then squared, we have a 64. That 64 is going to be implemented here. So now you have x squared minus 16x plus 64. And now you have done your perfect square trinomial. So your C in this case is 64. Okay? Let's practice this one more time. We used a formula to solve for our C, and it's going to be as perfect square trinomial. So again, our formula is b over 2 and then squared equals. Our b in this case is going to be 20 divided by 2 and then squared. 20 divided by 2 is 10. Make it a square, then you get 100. So that 100 is going to be your C, which is letter B. Now to write it as a trinomial, you have the expression x squared plus 20x, and then we have the plus 100. This is considered the perfect square trinomial, okay? That's all you do for this case when you try to solve for your C, your constant number, okay? We're gonna be doing some other practices with factorization and try to solve for your solutions, such as in this problem. So in this problem, you need to solve for the solutions of this quadratic expression. Now there's gonna be in case the situations where you cannot find a way to factor out this expression. What I mean factor it out is basically you come up with the parentheses, you put an x here and x here. Because x times x, you get x squared. Any number that's gonna give you a 16, when you multiply them, well, you have 1 times 16, you have 2 times 8, 4 times 4. Let's see, what else? I think that's it, no? Well, when you try to combine these numbers, you're not gonna get near the 14. You're not gonna get any number of 14 when you're trying to combine those two numbers. So what are you gonna do next? Well, in this occasion, we applied the completing the square. This is the method that works very well in these special occasions. So by completing the square again, we have our b over 2 and then squared. Our b in this case is -14 divided by 2 and then squared. -14 divided by 2, you get -7, and then a square, you get 49. Now, this 49, you're gonna use it right now. But first things first, you have to move this number, the constant number, to the other side. Okay? So by subtracting 16 on both sides, then you end up with x squared minus 14x. Leave a space and then negative 16. That 49 that you found here, you're gonna now implement it into the expression. So you're gonna put plus 49 and plus 49. You're always gonna do this, always. Whenever you're dealing with this situation that you cannot factor it out to solve for zeros, you have to move the constant to the other side and then complete the square and put them on both sides. Whatever answer you get on completing the square, you put it on both sides. And you're always gonna be adding it because this square, no matter if you have a negative or positive, this square is gonna always make this as a positive number. Just keep that in mind. So therefore, we could now factor out this expression. X squared, we have x and x because x times x, we get x squared. To get a 49, what two numbers multiply each other will give us 49? 7 times 7. And then if we combine these two, we get a 14. A negative because we have a negative 14. Negative 7 and negative 7 will give us negative 14. All right. We know that these two are the same, so we could just rewrite it once and make it a square. This section now, 49 minus 16. Let's use our calculator. Let's have 49 minus 16 and we get 33. So we get 33 here. All right, so what's the best way to eliminate the square? Well, by square root on both sides. You ended up with x. I could just eliminate the parentheses. You could just have x minus 7 equals plus and minus whatever you have here. You're always gonna have the plus and minus whenever you're doing the square root. Let's see. Under calculator, we have control x squared and we put in 33. Enter. We get 5.74. 5.74. All right, so we're not technically done yet. Hopefully you have written down this or else just pause it and then continue. Let me go ahead and erase this section since I'm running out of space. And let me bring this a little bit up. Perfect. All right, so now that we have this, we could make two things once at a time. You could have x minus 7 equals 5.74 and I'll put an and symbol here, and x minus 7 equals negative 5.74. The way we split this two up is so you won't get too much confusion of finding its solutions. If we move the 7 to the other side by adding 7 on both sides, we have x equals 12.74. All right. If we add 7 on both sides on this case, you have x equals, let's see, I believe it's gonna be like a 2.74. Let me check. So you have 7 minus 574. 5.74. Oh, my bad. Then it's 1.26. Yeah, I was doing this a little bit fast. Good thing I double checked. All right. So these two are your solutions. And that's pretty much, that's how you do it. So that's it. This one and this one are your two solutions for the quadratic expression. Let's go ahead and practice this one more time with a different problem. We have multiple choice as well. If we look at the quadratic expression, we cannot factor out this section because if we look at the last number, any two numbers multiply each other, that gives us 15, will be 1 times 15, 3 times 5, and that's about it. If we try to combine these two numbers, it's not going to give us 9. So we have to apply the completing the square method. So first, let's go ahead and subtract 15 on both sides. Hopefully we don't forget about that. We have x squared plus 9, leave a blank. Don't forget the x, leave a blank space, equals negative 15. Let's go ahead and complete the square. We have b over 2 and then squared. Our b is going to be a 9. 9 over 2 and then squared. 9 over 2 is going to be 4.5. And then square it. All right. So if you're not too familiar with calculations, you could just use your calculator. So 9 divided by 2, control enter, it's 4.5. Let's make this as squared. And you have 20.25. So plus 20.25 and plus 20.25. All right. So we could make this as squared and we could have this as an x. All right, let's see. So let's subtract this one with 15 and we get 5.25. 5.25. All right. So here, let's see, there's like a shortcut to this because I know you have to add it. Let me see. Yeah. So whatever you get here, you just put it here. Okay. It's like a shortcut, basically. What I'm trying to say. With basically what I eliminated was that I factor out this expression. I'll continue here in example. I factor out this expression as x plus 4.5 and x plus 4.5. And then from there, we jump into this expression. So technically, whatever you get here is gonna be here. And then you just make it squared. That's basically what we did here in the previous example. We got a -7. So from that -7, we just put x minus 7, and then we made x squared equals whatever you get from this side, okay? That's just like a shortcut way in case you want, if in case you want more practices, please look over the YouTube video on this link on the bottom. It's going to be very, very helpful for that kind of shortcut. All right. So in this case, we already know our next procedures. In order to eliminate a square, we need to square root on both sides. That way this and this gets eliminated. X plus 4.5 equals plus and minus whatever we get here. So let's use our calculator. Control X squared, 5.25. Enter. We get 2.29. Okay. Now let's go ahead and split them apart like the way we did it here in the last section. So let's subtract 4.5. So 2.29 minus 4.5, we get negative 4.2. 20, negative 4.20. If we have a negative, if we had negative 2.29, let's put it again. If we had negative 2.29 minus the 4.5, we get 6.79, negative 6.79. So technically we had two negative numbers. This is positives, this is not even near it. So in case you wanna do a little bit of round off, the most closest answer is gonna be letter D, okay? For those that are wondering how came out with this, with these two sections, let me just go ahead and erase everything. And leave it in this section. Let me see if I could probably highlight this information only. No. Perfect. So technically what happened is that I just split them apart and put X plus 4.5 equals 2.29. And we got this. And then X plus 4.5 equals negative 2.29. And we got this. Okay. That's basically what happened. All right. So here we just try to find our vertex. Okay. We have this expression and by completing the square. So it's already telling us that we need to complete the square. We don't need to think about too much if we need to factor it out or not. So first things first, move the constant. Subtract 8 on both sides. We have y minus 8 equals x squared plus 6x. Now, by completing the square, you have b over 2 and then squared. Our b in this case is a 6 divided by 2 squared. And we have a 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then squared is a 9. So you're gonna add the 9 here and add the 9 here. Remember, you have to do it on both locations. All right. Now, if you remember the shortcut, we just need to put x here and the square here. If you know the shortcut, whatever number you got here, you're just gonna place it here. Okay? So in this case, we're gonna put a plus 3. Let's see, -8 plus 9, you get 1. Okay, it's a positive 1 because the 9 is bigger. All right, so we still need to figure out our vertex. Now this part is pretty much straightforward and easy. Move the 1 back to its to the other side. So -1 and -1. Therefore, you ended up with this expression, y equals x plus 3 squared minus 1. If you guys remember from the previous lesson, your vertex is your h and k. Vertex is h comma k. And for our h, it has to be a -3 because -3 minus turns into a positive. So it has to be a -3. If you're still having difficulties about figuring out the vertex, you need to go back to the lesson of vertex form. And then our k is just going to be -1 from this expression, from here and here. Again, our formula for this, you have x minus h squared plus k. This is the formula that we use to find out for the vertex, the h and k. And since you already have a minus here, and you have a positive here, so your h has to be a negative because negative turns into positive. That's why it was a -3 as your h. And that's all. Basically, you're finished with -3 and -1. We're gonna do one more practice, and that will be it for today's lesson. So again, by completing the square, and we need to find our vertex. Move the 10 to the other side by subtracting 10 on both sides. So you have y minus 10 equals x squared plus 4x. Leave a space. I'm skipping around because by now, more or less, you should know what's going on. So to find our missing number, what's 4 divided by 2 is 2, and then squared is 4. So you're gonna add 4 and add 4 on both sides. Again, you're using this formula. Using this formula. So let's go ahead and jump into our shortcut. We got a 2 here from the parentheses from our formula. Then we put a 2 here. This is our shortcut. -10 plus 4, you ended up with -6. Add 6 on both sides. Then you ended up with this expression. Our vertex is gonna be your h and k. H comma k. Our h is gonna be -2 and your k is +6, which is letter C in this case. I skip around a lot of sections because everything is over here right in the details. So if you want to do it very detailed, just follow along those steps carefully. Between here and here is a shortcut. What usually happens is that x plus 2 and x plus 2. When I factor out this, you get this, and then this comes into this, okay? Well, thank you for watching today's video of 8.8. Hopefully you understood it very well. I would strongly recommend you watching this video on the tutorials folder or section on the Google Classroom. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.